going on, everybody? Welcome to LUMIX Live this week. It's good to be back after LUMIX Connect last week, which kept us from doing the actual live stream. Just like we promised the week prior, I do want to take a little bit of time on this particular stream to talk about some of the more in-depth parts of LUMIX Flow from the updates that we made back on the 20th. So we're going to demo that a little bit. I have an S5 Mark II hooked up to it, so I can walk through like the scripting stuff, how it interacts with the camera, especially like if you're over wired connection, and then some of the other tools. So we'll use this a little bit as kind of a refresher because we talked about some of this stuff before, but also just kind of update on some of those new features that were added for the S5 Mark II, the S5 Mark IIX, and the GH7. If you haven't already, you can get those firmware files for the S5 Mark II, Mark IIX, and the GH7 on line right now, so those are available. I will drop a link down in the chat for those, which I should have had prepped before I started, but it's an easy fix. So yeah, you can definitely get everything kind of updated so that you will be able to take advantage of at least LUMIX Flow, and then some of the other updates that we've added to those cameras in particular. Yeah, so there's the link for the firmware update page. If this is the first live stream that you're joining, these are the try to be weekly broadcasts that we do, where you get the opportunity to just chat with us. Chat directly with the brand, ask us questions. If it's something I can answer you, I'll try to answer it. Excuse me. There are certain things, obviously, I can't answer. So future product planning, future hardware, software, things like that, I can't answer those questions on this platform. If that's information you're looking for, definitely follow our social channels. Follow us here on LUMIX Live, because when we do have information that we can talk about, we'll always talk about them here and give you the ability to flesh out those questions that you may have, especially when something new comes out. We know that, at least even I know, before I was in this side of the world, I'd always have questions, about how does a feature work, or what exactly is included. Sometimes actually almost all the time, we'll give you all of the information here, where sometimes press releases and review sites may only cover certain components of an update. We'll talk about everything that gets added here on the stream. We also usually update that stuff on our social platforms over on Instagram, on TikTok, and more recently over on the Discord. So if you haven't already, a link is down in the description where you can check out the Discord for LUMIX. We have tons of conversations over there. We have a suggestions channel, so if you have requests for things you want to see in the future, you can always be able to put those things out on that platform as well, as kind of a more long-standing list of feature requests and stuff like that. Obviously understand that we can't always guarantee that, hey, something you ask for is going to get done. A lot of times, to be direct, a lot of times things that people ask for just aren't possible in modern cameras. They could be for a number of reasons, but these things help build better products over time. It helps understand where, from one perspective of development, it allows us to be able to say, like, hey, this is what we plan on, this is what we think of, but this is what users are actually asking us for. Where can we find where they match up? If there are things that really don't match up, how do we find ways to get them to be as close or exact, what people want? So it really gives you a lot of control as users, as photographers, videographers, to have your voice heard in what products and software are developed in the future. So yes, if you have questions during the stream, as you can see, many people are doing already, tag at LUMIX USA. That just lets me see it on my side, so we can try to get through as many of them as possible. If I don't get to your question during the stream, make sure to drop it, or even if I do and you just want to, reiterate and reinforce your question, drop it in the comments after the video is posted. That acts as a long-term kind of repository to reference back to. So this helps us, when I want to get this information over to engineers, when our team, kind of reviews and sees what people are saying. It gives them a reference point, so they don't have to go through the entire video and see the comments, since they're only show up at the timestamps when you commented them. What else? Before we actually jump into the LUMIX Flow demonstration, I just want to remind those of you in the United States about LUMIX Pro services. We have the Red and Platinum tier. Red is free, so if you've bought a LUMIX camera and it's a new camera, you are able to register for LUMIX Pro service. You can follow the QR code right below me, or a link down in the description. That gets you your extended 3-year manufacturer warranty, so you're just protected from any kind of manufacturer defect for much longer than, basic out-of-the-box stuff. If you're somebody who likes higher level of service and support, you can always take a look at the Platinum tier. That is a paid level service. That gets you 2-day repairs with next-day shipping both ways. You get 20% off out of warranty repairs. So if it's something where, it's water damage, or you broke it or dropped, or things happen, you get a bit of a break on the repair for that. You also get access to a membership hotline. So if you'd prefer to speak to somebody instead of going through a chat system or through email, you do have access to that as well. A number of other benefits as well, so you can take a look at those at the QR code down below or the link down in the description. Yeah, so let's start by looking at some of the questions that came in, because there were a couple really good questions here before we dive into Flow. So the first one that actually I do want to address is this is from, I think it's Lewis. Says LUMIX S9 needs a Flow app compatibility. It makes more sense for S9 users, the smartphone as an external screen because of the micro HDMI. That information has been passed on to the engineers. Honestly, I don't know if it's going to happen. Remembering that LUMIX Flow, and we'll talk about why I think, to start with, there is no compatibility to the S9. Product differentiation as far as like what it's designed for versus what practical implications there are. We'll talk about that when I go over the LUMIX Flow app. But we have pressed that information onto the engineering team that, like, hey, the monitoring system that's within Flow is a really nice benefit for some of the other cameras. So that kind of stuff is being taken into consideration. Again, I can't guarantee if it's going to happen, or even if it would, how long it would take. Because we've talked about this before, future, kind of planning and stuff like that with updates. Things have to be categorized in the importance of the update to the larger picture, right? So how many people does this affect? How many people are actually asking for it? Is there a legitimate benefit to having it there? A lot of that stuff just kind of categorizes like, hey, we've got, say X, Y, and Z that are being planned that are going to, be more impactful than, say this option. How do you determine which gets priority for process, for working? Because everything that ever goes into a firmware needs to be tested, run through its paces, tried to be broken to the best that you can prior to release. So that it doesn't, brick things like Bluetooth or Wi-Fi that you then would have to send a camera in to be serviced for. So, yeah, we have heard it. We have passed it to the engineering and the planning team. And know that I'm fighting for that as well. I would love to see Flow on the S9. I really like the monitoring tool functionality. But I can only push so much. So the more that y'all put your comments down after this video, like the comment fields, the more reference I have to be able to go back and say, see, people are asking for this. This is why they want it. Just this kind of backup there. So next question was from FC. Says, what is the dynamic range of Vlog? Rec 709, natural, standard profiles. Also, is there a LUT from Vlog to natural or standard? It's a bit of a challenging question. So Vlog is the spec that we do publish. So that's, it's going to depend on the camera. It could be 13 plus, 14 plus, or 15 plus. It depends on, what sensors being used, what processors used, what generation of the cameras there are. As an example, the S1 Mark II can support 15 plus stops of dynamic range. That is when you engage the DR boost functionality. That gets you an extra stop of highlight dynamic range. So just to be clear, this is highlight dynamic range you get out of that. Where if you go to a camera like, the earlier GH5 series, that's where you're at 13 plus. And a lot of times when you look at those figures, those are the full visible stops of dynamic range, because that's a measurable, kind of like, hey, this is what the spec says that it is. I always encourage people, go take a look at CineD, look at their Imatest charts. If you want to go from a purely what is the dynamic range or what is the latitude, now with the kind of updated testing that they do, that gives you a much better sense of like how flexible the log profiles could be or can be, depending on what you're trying to go for. When it comes to things like Rec 709 or natural or standard, the thing is that they're all going to have pretty similar dynamic range outside of Vlog. Vlog is designed to give you the most dynamic range. Rec 709, and let me just double check this. This riveting internet of me typing to pull up a general setup. So, Rec 709, it is a display standard, so you're not going to get the 14 plus stops of dynamic range. It's just not going to happen. Within that kind of platform, we see that because 709 and by extension natural, standard, vivid, flat, things like that are designed around a Rec 709 output. Your dynamic range could be anywhere between let's see here, I see some places saying you're going to get somewhere around 5 to 6, but then I see other things that are like, you could be getting around 10 to 11, because a lot of it can also come down to how you edit the footage. So if you're taking log and then putting it into 709 with mapping and the way you expose. So understanding that, like 709 is designed so that if you were to put this into a broadcast situation, so I'm going to take this and hand it right to, say, a production studio that's going to put it right on TV, you know that you're working within a safe range that the TV's going to show pretty close to what you captured. You're not going to have massively blown out highlights or massively crushed out shadows, because it's crushing. Levels also come into play with that. Where you'll see the differences between all of this is a couple of things. It's either things like noise reduction, which typically your photographic color profiles are going to be maybe a little more aggressive with noise reduction than I think someone who's looking to maximize dynamic range would want. They also have that, more deliver ready version of the output. So if the goal is to maximize resolution, you got to use a log profile or you shoot in a raw platform. And to be clear, raw platform, like a raw output versus typically like Vlog internally, it's not that you're necessarily getting more dynamic range, it's what you're doing with the footage. Raw files and ProRes tend to have more noise, which often gets confused with having less dynamic range, but there's more detail and you have tools to denoise. We get into kind of the weeds there. So yeah, Vlog's going to be your top. Rec 709 is going to be, ready to go for broadcast. So expect what you'd see on a normal TV. It's not designed to shoot HDR. Let's put it that way. Natural and standard, the big differences you'll see when you go to those profiles is that there's a lot more contrast, and usually there's a lot more saturation added to those particular images, which can have the appearance of much lower dynamic range because you're purposely shifting the way the curves work. It'd be the same thing if you took a Vlog profile and tried to convert it to, Cinev or to standard. You're shooting Vlog, you have access to 14 stops, but now you're crushing everything back down into much lower dynamic range. In some cases, you could be talking about half the dynamic range. So that's the best way to think about it. There aren't particular numbers for these other outputs. Like 709 is the only closest one I could think of that would have some reference, because there is it's a standard. It's designed for outputting. It's designed to map to the 709 color space and the profile. Dynamic range can shift a bit depending on how you're setting it up, because you've got, you know, things like knee control. So yeah, little differences there. The follow-up question you had is there a chart of all available features on Image App, Sync App, Lab, and Flow? Want to transfer small photos and videos automatically while shooting to the phone? Which app to use? So there's not really a side-by-side comparison, but we do have the microsites that give you kind of like, hey, this is what the app does. What you're describing, wanting to be able to shoot photos and videos and have them automatically transfer, would be LUMIX Lab. Now that will depend on what camera you have. As long as you're using like an S5 Mark II or newer, well, actually, as long as you're using a G9 Mark II and newer, you will be able to utilize LUMIX Lab. That lets you transfer JPEGs. You can transfer RAW files, though the app doesn't support RAW files internally. There is a toggle in the app that it'll just add it to your phone or tablet, so then you can put the RAW file in an editor of your choice. And then when it comes to video files, it's MP4 Lite that can be transferred automatically in LUMIX Lab, or you can do all of this stuff after you've captured the particular images. The Image app is the much older app within our lineup that is for cameras that even predate the GH5. So, you know, we're talking, you know, I think it's like the G7, the G85, the GX8. Those cameras are all Image app cameras. Part of the reason why those actually the main reason why those cameras can't support any of the newer apps is because of the engines that they run on. They're much older. They're not tuned. They're not designed to be able to transmit and communicate the information needed with the Sync app, Flow app, or LUMIX Lab. And then that brought us to LUMIX Sync. LUMIX Sync was GH5 basically all the way up to GH7 before we added LUMIX Lab support. So the G9 Mark II and the GH7 are kind of they float between the two, or they used to, where you could use and you can use LUMIX Lab on those cameras, you could use LUMIX Sync on those cameras if you wanted to, but LUMIX Lab has really shifted everything over, and we're building more stuff out into LUMIX Lab, so it'll have more functionality that's closer to what LUMIX Sync had. LUMIX Sync had a bit of a long run, so it had a lot of time to have features added to it. When we move to the new engine and we work on different methods of being able to maintain and initiate the connections to your mobile devices, that necessitated, you know, not every feature was able to be just immediately ported over, because it's a ground up change to the way that the app works. So Lab has a lot more reliability in it, and I'm going to address some of the people that were saying that they have some challenges connecting with LUMIX Lab. There's actually a very simple fix that I'd say 9 out of 10 times that I've troubleshot this immediately fixes it for people. But yeah, the Sync app, like, you had geolocating, you did have an auto transfer function, you did have remote shooting. That was the one that we launched, things like being able to toggle live streaming. At the very end of its lifetime was when it got USB tethering, in the sense that you could plug your camera into your phone hardwired. That came when we did the live streaming functionality with the GH5 Mark II. So certain stuff like that's not on LUMIX Lab. Like, you can't hardwire to LUMIX Lab. There isn't RAW support in the app, but LUMIX Flow or LUMIX Sync didn't have an editor in it anyway, so there's not really a comparison there. Geolocating was different on the LUMIX Lab app. Now it uses passive, so it is while you're shooting, it's logging and writing to the images in real time. So it's not passive, it's more of like an active, where LUMIX Sync was a very passive system where the phone would just log GPS information, and then you'd have to manually go and say, hey, push the geolocation information to the device, and that could take a while. And then LUMIX Flow is a production tool, which we're going to talk about in a second. That's a very different design and goal of what we've built that app for. And hopefully what I show you will kind of point that difference out for you. So Ruckus, this is one. It says, hey Sean, unable to connect to LUMIX Flow version 1.3.0 external monitor with wired USB 3.2 Gen 2x2 cable with S1II firmware 3.4 latest. I get the message in-app connect with LUMIX. So while I'm going through this demonstration, Ruckus, let me know what mobile device you're using. What are you what phone or tablet are you trying to connect the app to? Because there's two potential things that I 100% know would fix this. One of them is on Android, one of them is on iOS. So yeah, if you can let me know what mobile device you're trying to connect to, I can probably get you all sorted and set with that, as far as the wired connection goes. Doogie can you demo the new Magic LUT feature with some examples and give us any tips to using it effectively? I will try to. Like I said, we're going to talk about Flow first, but after I get through that demo, I'll talk about the Magic LUT functionality and kind of like what it gives you the capabilities to do, and then how to use it. Where did my chat go? There we go. Okay. So let's actually kind of jump into this. So I have, come on, I have my tablet here. So we're going to switch to my top down and we're going to talk about LUMIX Flow. So to start with, LUMIX Flow is not just a monitoring tool. Yes, you have a lot of really cool benefits because you can hardwire or wirelessly connect, and we talked about that 2 weeks ago. So if you want to see that demonstration, go take a look at that video. But really at the core of what LUMIX Flow is designed for is a workflow tool. So when you first get it, you'll see that you have 3 demo or sample kind of projects that are in here, so that you kind of have a reference as to like, oh, okay, this is what this can do. So what I've done is I've taken the documentary storyboard and I've just made a copy of it. This way I can actually go in and I can edit this and I can show you the full functionality. So we're going to start at the top here with script. So the whole purpose of this particular format here is so that I can write out either a script or a concept or, you know, the characters, like what it is that I want to happen in the scene. I can script out the whole thing if I even wanted to. I can kick this out as a PDF as well, so this lets me, you know, take the whole thing, and then if I'm someone who would prefer to print it or hand it out to the people, the actors or the talent, whatever it is, I could do that as well. If you're doing something, and I know this is documentary, but like if you're doing something where it's like, hey, I need to do like a product video and I want to make sure I have all my shots organized and I want to make sure that I have my storyboard set, you could do that in here too. You could write out all your main, you know, kind of points like I need to hit XYZ, the client wants to see XYZ, all that stuff. But then we go down into the actual shot list. And you'll see this has a number of kind of demonstrations here with it. So I have the ability for, in this case, scene 1. And I can label it. I can give it some information. Is this an indoor, outdoor shoot? What time of day is this? I can name it. So in this case, for the demo, it's a bar, it's indoor, and it's at night. Pretty straightforward. Underneath that is where I can then put my shot list. I can then say like here, so we're going to open the scene up. It's going to be a street at night, probably going to be the, you know, facade of the building, the front of the bar, whatever it is. But I have the ability to tap on that particular image and I can change this. So I can put a reference image in. So if I've done, you know, site scouting and I've got the images of the actual bar that I want to shoot at, I can take that image, I can put it in here. If I've already kind of specced out or blocked out where, you know, this is kind of probably where I want the camera to be, you know, you take that image, you get it ready to go, you drop it in here so that you have an ongoing reference for it. You also have the ability to make up your own here. So you would just hit the plus icon and then it goes into your gallery and you load your images in. So we've got that. The other kind of cool stuff about this is that I have the ability to also come in here and set time time settings per shot. So this would be, you know, how many minutes, how many seconds do I want this? You know, what's my target for this shot to be? If I only want the shot to be maybe 15, 20 seconds, I want to make sure that, you know, the crew, the camera operator is going to know, or if I'm shooting this myself, a good reference to be like, okay, this shot needs to be roughly around, say, 15, 20 seconds. I can plug this in and say, all right, I want this to be 20 seconds. Hit done. Okay. That now gives me a notice in here that says, hey, this shot should be around 20 seconds. I can then go in and I can actually add the location. So I can say, hey, this is the address of the location. This is the description of the location that I need. So I can add all of that in there as well. And then I can also add in the groups. So I can come in and say, describe what I want the talent doing. I can describe it by saying like, hey, in this case it says, you know, we have Tom as the character. So I can say this is Tom walking up to the bar, right? So I can select Tom walking, hit OK, and then that gives me that setup. So I can apply this to the different scenes here and say, okay, well, Tom's going to be walking in these particular setups. So when I hit OK, you see now that that gets added in there as well. I then can also add more of a description for that particular shot as well. And you do this over and over again. So, you know, indoor scene, again, I can come in, take, you know, if I took a picture of the bar itself inside, I can drop, you know, little mannequins in there, determine how I want them. I can adjust this, so I can go in and do characters. So then I can move these characters. I can rotate them. I can make them larger, smaller, so they fit better. You know, if I want him walking in, you know, right in the middle there, so that's cool. I can assign to have this as a sitting person, walking, running, you know, basics of being able to set this up. So let's change this back to, we just want him walking. You have the ability to also go in and pick templates. So this does also have some basic templates set in here for, you know, medium shots, for full lengths or wides to close-ups. Just some basics so that if you've never done this kind of thing before, you at least have some references to be able to determine like, hey, you know, the common things of, you know, if you're going to have two people talking together, how should you frame them, you know, in the shot? Well, you would typically want to say, hey, if I've got two people having a conversation, basics would say I should have one person that, like, if I'm talking to a person on my right, I should be on camera. If I'm filming this, if I'm talking to someone on my right, I should be on camera right, from the camera operator's perspective. And if that other person should be on the opposite side, because they should be talking to each other. You wouldn't want to necessarily have someone like this talking to someone off camera like this. You can, obviously there's been great movies that have had that before. But this is just in general that kind of tool to give you just a starting point. You then can adjust all of this and go through each of these particular scenes. Again, you have the two of them talking. You can shift this around, so I can come in and say like, all right, well, we want to make sure that we're blocked off where, you know, maybe only half of that person's back is in the frame. Maybe we want this person further. You want them down a little bit so that you get that sense of depth. Each of these little things can be adjusted. And then you can come in and add another scene. So this would be, you know, set change, whatever you're going to be doing there. Same descriptions that you can add. And then you have the ability to also go in and, you know, add all of the stuff that we were talking about before. So once you have, you know, your storyboard and your script and your shot list and your scenes all kind of set up, no matter how complex or simple they are, you then have the ability to come back. If I go back into this, you then have the ability to come back and then actually record with this. So I can record USB or I can record Wi-Fi. I'm hardwired connected for this right now. But when we talk about, you know, someone had said like, hey, where it says connect the camera. So if I connect in with record for USB, you'll see it just says connect with camera. I recommend don't even get to this screen trying to connect the camera, be on this screen. Take your USB cable, plug it into the tablet or the phone that you're using. On the camera, I don't know if I can show this without shifting a bunch of stuff. On the camera, you're going to get a option here. So I highly recommend leaving the USB settings to select on, kind of input. You're going to select LUMIX Flow. And then on the tablet, in this case, this is a Samsung tablet. One, I get this annoying, choose what you want it to do for USB. You don't have to select anything. I can just tap out of this. Then I'll get this option, allow LUMIX Flow to access S5 Mark II. I'm going to hit OK. Now it's ready to go. You'll see on the camera, this will definitely be hard to see, you'll get a little icon up here in the corner that shows you that you are connected to LUMIX Flow. Now I can do record USB. You can turn these off. This gives you that just kind of navigation setup. Usually people tend to leave this on for a couple of times when you're using the app until you get yourself comfortable with, okay, what's the swipe navigation to do? You can click out of this. To start with, you get a list of your scenes and your shots. Now, I'm going to rotate this horizontal because we're filming horizontal. And right now you'll see I am in scene 1, shot 1 is selected. This gives me that information about it. So this is the streets at night. This has the dialogue that I want for that particular scene. It gives me that this shot should only take around 20 seconds and Tom's walking. If I put a location in, I'd have the location. But what I can do now is I can swipe this to the right and I can be controlling my camera. So right now I've got my S5 Mark II set in Vlog, as you can see over here. So it's a Vlog and I have the LUT off. The new update allows me to go into the options up here, hit LUT View Assist, so I can actually be monitoring the LUT that I would be using for edit. As a reminder, that LUT is chosen on the camera. This is to help offset potential challenges of you select the wrong LUT on this than what is actually going to be used. So it's tethered from what the camera is set for. So you would just make sure that the LUT you're actually wanting to use to preview is chosen on the camera side. Pretty straightforward. If I know that, say, this is a shoot that we're going to also be pulling some verticals out of, maybe for social promotion of a short film, things like that, this is where I can add my frame markers. So I can be able to say, like, okay, I have my kind of like safety zones if I'm filming in open gate. So this lets me adjust, set these things up. Again, the frame markers are pulled from what the camera has them set for. So you would set your frame markers on the camera first, and then the Flow app is only toggling them on and off. I also have that ability to come in, add things like center marker. I can add grid lines if I want, rule of thirds or stuff like that. I can have my zebra patterns running. A few updates ago, we added the ability, if you're on the S1II series, you can have false color showing here. The S1II series has false color. The S5II series does not support false color, so you have the other tools, histogram, focus peaking if I'm in manual, vector scope, which is going to show you the log vector scope, because you're going to want, if you're working in log, you are setting everything up so that log is properly set up. Not the LUT. The LUT is supposed to be the corrected version of this, so this is assuming what your base is. If you build your LUT on a color-corrected log footage that you've done ahead of time, and you've built everything in line, you want to make sure that your log footage is set correctly. And then also with waveform, your waveform is based on the log footage, because if you're shooting log, you're trying to maximize what log's output is. So I can come in and I can adjust my ISO, watch my waveform shift, and know, okay, I can shoot right about up to here before I'm clipping any of my highlights. That lifts everything up out of the shadows. And then when I come back in and I turn my LUT View Assist on, you'll see that, all right, well, this is kind of hot. If I designed my LUT knowing that I overexposed by a couple of stops, this is how you would be able to correct for stuff like that. So you get a couple different tools built in here. We're going to bring this back down just so that it looks a little bit nicer for this particular set. The next step is that you know, so one, we've got the set list and the scene list and the shot list. We've got what my camera's seeing. I can toggle my recording. This will trigger on the camera. This gives me the red box on here, so I know that I'm recording. I get the red box on the camera as well if I have that enabled. You get the beep on the camera if you've got that enabled. But what's cool is when I stop recording, it will check the card. It'll then prompt me and say, hey, what do you want to rate that particular scene? So if on the spot you're like, oh, you know, the actors, you know, messed up the lines, right? So I can go in and say, well, that was a bad take. Let's do another take for this one. Go in, record, actors say their lines, or, you know, if I'm doing product videography or something like that, hey, this was like a perfect shot. We call cut. I'm able to then look at this and say, hey, this was a perfect take. Hit OK. Cool. That's all now tagged and stored so that, hey, I know which shots were which. Now, if I swipe back, I've got a couple shots that I've done for here. Let's move on to scene 2, shot 1. We come in. We're not really going to change the scene here because of the way I've got it set up, but say, all right, I've got a couple shots here. Let's do this. Let's mark this one as a keep, but you know, I got to kind of review it. Not 100% sure if I really like that take. Do another one. This again for a couple seconds here. We'll stop this. We'll say, okay, this was a good take, and then let's do one more so that we have a bad take. And it's like, oh no, we made a mistake. We stop this, and then let's mark this as bad. The other thing that you have access to with the update, so if I'm on an S1II and I'm using LUMIX Flow, I also have the ability to use tap focus. So I can tap on the screen and have it move the focus point. It's much more accurate than the first version that we released of this. It matches what the camera's doing more accurately than what it was doing originally. So we've got all that stuff kind of set. I also have the ability to swipe right, and I can hit on the different scenes that I've captured, and I can look in here and say, okay, here are all of my shots that I've had. Here's my good shot. Here's a good shot because they're green. The red shots are flagged as the bad shots, and the blue shots are flagged as the keep. So like I need to review these. The nice thing with this is that I can tap on this, and it will play back what it was. So this lets me look at it and say, okay, well, maybe that shot wasn't as bad as I thought. So I can come in, tap the option, and I can change that to keep. We maybe need to review this on the computer in the editor first. I can go back into, say, this one, this keep shot. We're going to take a look at it again. We're going to say, well, you know, that actually was a good shot. So we'll change that one to okay. Back up, and now they've all been reclassified. So this gives you a lot of control on site to be able to get and have at least a much closer understanding of, did I get all my shots? So that's the other nice thing is, did I actually get all of my shots? You know, if I go through all of this, do I have every scene shot that I need? Is everything ready to go? Do I have to worry? You know, you end the shoot, you get back home, and then you realize, like, oh crap, we didn't shoot the one scene. Now I got to go back and reshoot it. So this is great for organizing and being able to actually, you know, do the job. Like I said, you do have that ability also to come in. You know, you can select all. I can select only the business ones. So if I only want select shots to be working, cool. If you're on site and you're like, oh, you know, there's a shot we want to add. Maybe the client's there with you and they're like, you know, it'd be really cool if we could do this shot as well. I can easily just tap add a shot. I can add a sub shot to this. So this adds 1-1-1 so you know that it's been added. Add in the stuff that I want so that, hey, the client's describing this to me, so I'm taking notes like, okay, well, the client says they maybe want to try this from a different angle. Cool. Take it. I have all the controls to be able to come in and change this kind of stuff and get it set up. Or I can just do add a shot and add it to the end of the shot list as like an extra shot. So this is like, hey, these are extras. Excuse me. So designed to give you a ton of flexibility. Once you've done the whole shoot with the camera. So say, you know, you're all ready to go, you've looked at everything, you're like, cool, we got all the shots, everything's ready, I've marked stuff, I've set up, you know, my good, my keep, my bad shots, all of that kind of stuff. You then have this option for export. So here I can tap export, and this will give you an explanation of what is going to happen here. This is going to kick out an XML file for you. So this lets me say, hey, I want to save out an XML. This will create the files. So it will be XML or Final Cut Pro XML. Saves it so that you can then take this, put it on your computer, and as long as that file and all of the video clips are in the same folder, so you would have to take the video files off, take the XML file off, you know, however you data manage your stuff, put it into the same folder. When you then go into like Premiere or whatever your editing software is, and you drag and open that XML file, everything will show up categorized by scene with its shot calibration or categorization, so that a lot of your organization of your clips for your timeline are done ahead of time for you. So you have the options here to say, I want to export this over USB. Because I'm connected over USB, this will send it and write it to the SD card one. Or I can save this on the smartphone or the tablet. Usually we're going to save this on the card, so I'm going to do export USB. I'm just going to tap OK. Give that a second. Exported to memory card in slot 1. And now I have an SD, on the SD card, I have a .xml file that has all of the tagging information, the scene information that I shot all of those images with. So it allows me to be much more organized and, where it's applicable, work much faster than, you know, necessarily maybe the older method of doing this, where either maybe you had a notebook where you would, you know, kind of remember the shots, things like that. Because now everything is time-stamped. And then on top of it, everything is now already kind of flagged properly, so in my editor I know, okay, these, you know, 7 images, these 7 video clips, I've already tagged them for the ones that I knew were good shots on set, the ones that I knew were terrible takes, so I can just literally take all those ones that were terrible and just dump them. I don't need them. And then all the keep ones I can then review. I know, hey, I've marked these as keep because, you know, I got to review them on a larger screen. I want to make sure that things like, you know, maybe I want to make sure focus pull was right. Maybe I want to make sure and double check, you know, is my framing really right because I'm looking at different screen monitors. Maybe I want to look at everything on a much more, you know, color accurate display because I color match my displays. The whole purpose of Flow, and hopefully this kind of helps bring back to that, like, hey, we want to see LUMIX Flow on an S9. The whole concept is that Flow was built for the higher end cameras where you are more likely going to be doing production or some sort of scripted or planned out types of video. That doesn't necessarily mean that you wouldn't do those things with an S9, to be clear. A lot of you have shown us how much more flexible the S9 can be than necessarily how we've originally designed it. But all of that kind of points to the fact that the S9 was designed as much more of an entry-level, consumer-friendly camera, as something that I can just take with me, I can casually go shoot with. Obviously, it's not an unlimited recording timed camera, so long takes are really not something that was in the design goal for this camera. We designed it to be like, hey, I like to share on social. I like to have a camera that I can just casually shoot with. I don't need a workhorse camera. I want something that I can just throw in my bag and take with me. So, like, here's mine. This is my take with me travel camera. I even have, it's a manual lens on there. So I know that for the purpose of what Flow was built for, it kind of doesn't make sense for this camera because that's not who we built this camera for. That's not who we advertise it for. It's not who we recommend this camera for. Don't recommend, if you're a, heavy working professional and you have one camera that you rely on for long form video recording, it's not this camera. As much as I know some of you want it to be, it's not this camera. So if you do use it and, it doesn't do what you want it to do, just understand, That's not why we built it, and we've been telling you from day one that's not why we've built it. But with the advent of, the better monitoring tools that have been built into it, we have heard from numerous people, myself included, that the monitoring function, especially with Wi-Fi, can be advantageous for people like this. If I'm using this to, say, capture simple YouTube videos, the monitor can be pretty useful. So all of that to say, like, it doesn't guarantee that this camera is going to get LUMIX Flow support, but we do recognize that, a YouTuber, the person we created this for, that's a much more casual, does see benefit in some of the functionality that we've launched in LUMIX Flow, even though that's not what it was originally designed for. I would say our history of being able to adapt to the way y'all use our equipment does show that, we do pay attention to those things, and we may not be the fastest at addressing some of them. I know some people always want, hey, it's a simple line of code, or it's an easy firmware. None of us are writing code for cameras. None of us have the ability to actually say whether or not it's simple or not. But those things do get evaluated. So that's the general overview of Flow, from the scripting and the storyboarding and the idea there. I don't have everything set up to be able to actually show you the XML file on like a Premiere timeline at this point. Just because I have too much other crap going around on my desk. But if we want, I could probably go into that, maybe next week we can do that. I can give maybe like 10-15 minutes, just kind of show y'all how that works. But yeah, so that's LUMIX Flow. That's some of the biggest benefits that system works. And probably the coolest part, actually, one thing that I did not mention is that, so if I go all the way back to the main screen here, you'll see that I've been working under the LUMIX tab. So this is assuming that I've got a LUMIX camera, so it gives me the ability to drop in and say, hey, I'm going to plug a camera into this, or I'm going to wirelessly connect a camera to this. If you don't have a LUMIX camera, you don't have a camera that's compatible with Flow, but you really like some of the tools that it has, you can still use this. You can still use the scripting, you can still use the scene, the shot list, all that stuff. You can use it as a storyboarding and scripting tool. But if I only have my phone or my tablet with me, I can come in and say, hey, I want to use the camera on my device. So I come in, I made a copy of that, this is a short drama that I would want to shoot on my phone or my tablet in this case. Same deal. I've got everything set up there. All the same kind of controls. I can go into record. And when I go into record, we're going to allow this to use while I'm working with the app. The cool thing, this will be hard to show. The cool thing is that I can use the camera on the tablet or the phone to then do exactly what I was doing before. So I can record a couple of clips. Let's stop that. I can do all of my same controls to say, yep, this was a good clip. I can then go back out of this. I can then go into edit and actually put together the shots and everything quickly on the tablet itself. So this gives me a pretty simplified version of being able to work with Flow if you're not sure if you really like it, if you don't have a LUMIX camera that's compatible with it, but you want to play around with how does it work. The only thing that doesn't exist in the tablet side is the XML format, because it's designed more as I'm going to do some simple stuff, editing, working on the tablet itself. So yeah, it's a pretty cool tool overall that I highly encourage you all to play with. Even if it's just, if you don't think you need scripting or storyboarding or some kind of plan to film something, which I prefer to just kind of like wing it and go by, what I feel at that time, you will notice a big difference in the production quality. If you're someone who's trying to create a YouTube channel or you're trying to create content that you can share on YouTube, getting your ideas down, writing down what you want to say, how you want to say it, how you want the cameras to look, a tool like this can be invaluable because you'll realize quickly, the more you can keep things organized ahead of time, the more efficient you can be in the filming side of it. And with the tools of XML, the more efficient I can be on the editing side of it, which means if I'm doing this to make money on YouTube, my production, my pre-production, my production, and my editing now can become much shorter and more efficient, which means I spend less time per video, which means my hourly rate, based on things like AdSense or whatever you're doing, now shoots up because I spent less time to produce a higher quality video that gets more views because it's a higher quality video, it's got better audio, it's a more cohesive story that's told. It becomes a really beneficial tool for training yourself into a much better workflow. That if you're someone like me who I don't shoot professional video content, I just do live streaming, which to me is a little different. I could do with a script and a storyboard for this stuff, but it just makes things a lot easier and more organized overall. So that's LUMIX Flow. Let's answer some questions, because I'm sure there may be some questions about everything that I just kind of covered, and I haven't looked at the chat since I started. So okay. Let's see here. Yep, can't answer that one. Feature request: capability to have screen information on LUMIX cameras to shift to a vertical orientation when shooting in portrait mode. I know I've mentioned this before. Yeah, I've mentioned that to the engineers as well, and we've shown them, the commentary on this and some of our other things that we've done. So yeah, I 100%. I want to see it. I don't know if it's gonna be possible. I don't know what the constraints of what the engines can do, what the gyros can do, if they can be programmed to do that kind of stuff. Some things that you would want to do in a product, especially when you're in something like a camera where it's a very purpose-built processor, if you don't plan for those things in the initial design of it, sometimes they're not possible because either instruction sets are missing or overhead's missing to be able to manage it. I don't know. But I will continuously push the engineering team because I would love to see vertical display if I turn the camera vertically. I think that would be awesome. It's a tiny little, quality of life improvement that I think people would benefit from. Is there any chance of the firmware update process going to LUMIX Lab? Thanks always. Do you mean being able to update your camera through LUMIX Lab? That does exist. LUMIX Lab can do firmware updates when you're connected. It runs on a different server than what the web designed version is, where I can just go to the link I dropped in the chat, download the file, unzip it. For those that have ever had problems with unzipping the firmware files on Mac OS, if you don't have your settings right for automatic unzip, you've probably downloaded the firmware files from our website, and then you get an error that says Mac OS can't unpackage this file or something, and then it's like a .bin file. That's because Mac's trying to treat a .bin file as if it's a zipped file and unpackage it. It doesn't have to. It's not supposed to. That .bin file is what you take and put on the card. You don't have to unzip the .bin file. In fact, if you do, if you find a way to do it, because I know I can do it on Windows computers, if you do, you get a .bin.tz or trz, one of the other files. You try doing any of that stuff, it ain't going to work on the camera. It's the .bin file is what you put on your card, and then run the firmware update on the camera. I say all of that because in some cases, the LUMIX Lab app, one, you have to connect your camera to the app so that it knows that you have a camera and can notify you and say, hey, there's a firmware update available for your camera. Not every camera, I think, supports firmware updates on LUMIX Lab. So, yeah. Although, could have sworn we do firmware updates on Lab. Unless I'm getting that crossed with LUMIX Sync. Because I 100% know we did it on Sync. I will double check on that because maybe everything I just said is incorrect and was referencing for LUMIX Sync. I will check again for you. Harold. Yeah, I will double check on that again for you, Harold. Please make a detailed tutorial on using ProRes RAW in Resolve, like there is official LUMIX RAW to Vlog LUT. I would love to see an official LUMIX tutorial on how to grade ProRes RAW. You won't see that kind of tutorial from us because that's not like we don't Resolve or Premiere or any of those things aren't our programs, and there's so much that can go into it. You're not going to see a tutorial on what to do with the raw file because, one, it's way more up to your personal preference or your style. I highly recommend for content like that, for educational content on what to do with the content that you've captured on your camera, any camera, go look at creators, you know, in the YouTube space. Look at people like the people that I look to for things like grading would be like Kofi, Cam. Cam Mackey has done some great videos where he talks about his editing pipeline, especially in Resolve. ProRes RAW in Resolve is still pretty early. I've read certain things about how it's great that it has it, but there are very limited controls. Anytime I play with ProRes RAW, I use Premiere, and I use the plugin Octopus RAW, which gives me all of those controls for, you know, white balance, ISO setting, tint, highlight recovery, all of those tools I have access to using Octopus RAW's plugin for Premiere. That is something I bought myself. That's not a Panasonic or Lumix endorsement. I bought them because I wanted to be able to just have some more control, and I really don't like editing on Final Cut Pro, or whatever the heck it's called now. I'm primarily Windows user for that stuff, and I haven't jumped on the Resolve bandwagon. I've always grown up editing in Premiere. I will probably die editing in Premiere as long as it's around. But yeah, I would look at people like Cam Mackey. I know Kofi has talked about it before. I think Connor's talked about it a couple of times, about some generals there. Look for people that are experts on the editing software that you want to work with. Someone who, you know, edits in Resolve. Even look at, you know, Blackmagic's content on Resolve. How to work within the Resolve platform. They have amazing tools. Each of these companies, Resolve, Final Cut, or well, Resolve and Premiere, I don't really see many people that have detailed tutorials on Final Cut, though I've never been really looking for them. They're going to give you much more, like if you just want brass tacks, what's the core information I need, look at the manufacturer's site for the platform, because to them, RAW, like in this case ProRes RAW, it's just ProRes RAW. It doesn't matter if it comes from our camera or anybody else's. They're going to address it as a format. That's probably more beneficial for you, given what your question was. So, all things, I cannot sync my S1II with LUMIX Lab. Yes, so I did mention this before about syncing cameras to LUMIX Lab. So let's talk about this for a little bit. So, linking up your camera to LUMIX Lab. There's a couple things that I've noticed, and it seems to be more on, it seems to be very device dependent. If I'm using my, so I have three main devices that I work with. I have a Z Fold 7. So this is my everyday Android phone. This is my primary. I have a 15 Pro Max. So standard iPhone, but it is a USB-C iPhone. And then I have this tablet. This is a Samsung Galaxy S8 tablet. This is like the basic one. All three of them have had different things happen when, you know, either after a camera firmware update or after an OS update that partially breaks my connections. And I've tested this with other cameras as well, not just ours. And you'll see similar kinds of challenges in some cases, depending on how the app is designed to access that device. So if you're running into problems where, you know, I can't get it to connect, here's a few troubleshooting things that I recommend. For one, if you had connected the camera to the app prior to an update, and then after an update it's like it doesn't want to connect, restart the connection process. Hit the three buttons there, delete connection, it's deleted, and then go to your camera, which I'll shift this around a little bit so we can actually look at the camera now. Go into your camera. This will be real hard to see on the screen. I'm sorry, y'all. But you're going to go into the camera, and then I'm going to go down into the setup option, which is the wrench. Going to go to the gear option. Go down to reset. Go into this, but be very careful. Don't just hit yes to everything in here. Hit no to rec settings. Hit yes to network settings. And then hit no to custom settings. What this does is this clears all of the Wi-Fi and Bluetooth connections that you've done on the camera, so that it basically acts as if it's fresh. I've not connected to the device before. Now, from this point, I've got no devices connected on my tablet. Typically, what I would do is I would close the app, open the app back up, go to my camera, and then on my camera itself, I'm going to go into the Bluetooth connections, which actually in this case I have to disconnect the USB because I was set for USB connection. I'm going to go back into the camera. I'm going to go to Bluetooth. I'm going to turn Bluetooth function on for smartphone. This is going to start up and it's going to say, hey, connect. Tap on pair the camera. Give this a second. There's my S5 Mark II. Hit pair. Give it a second. And now we're connected. I'd say 9 out of 10 times doing those basic steps, telling the camera to reset network connections, and then clearing the previously connected camera out of LUMIX Lab has fixed any of the connection issues. The reason you could potentially run into this, not to make excuses or anything, but the reason you can potentially run into this, and this isn't just a camera thing, I've had this happen on computers before, I've had this happen on my, honestly, I've actually had this happen a lot of times on my Google Chromecast that I use for the display in my office. After an update, sometimes code is changed for Wi-Fi efficiency or Bluetooth efficiency that doesn't fully populate out when the device is expecting a previous connection, or maybe you've tried to connect before and it thinks it's connected. So by just clearing some of that stuff, it's the classic, IT troubleshooting, right? Well, have you tried turning it on and off again? It's so dumb, but in some cases that can just fix the problem. That's the same for Flow. If you're having problems connecting to Flow, try the same thing. Clear the camera connection out of Flow if you've been able to connect it before. Go to your camera, do a reset on the network settings, close the app. You can power cycle the camera if you want at that point, then retry from scratch. As I said, 9 out of 10 times, that has solved the problem when I've troubleshot them in person. In fact, actually at the LUMIX Connect event, I did have one person was having challenges connecting to LUMIX Flow with one of the loaner cameras. I believe it was one of the loaner cameras. And yeah, it was the same thing. Because it had tried to connect, maybe it was a similar device or whatever, it kept giving an error that said, like, cannot communicate with the camera. Did a reset on the camera itself for network, cleared out the previous connections in the lab app, and then we were good to go. Everything was fine. It connected right up and didn't have that problem again. Since we're looking at LUMIX Lab, someone had asked to give a quick little walkthrough about Magic LUT. So I've got an image here. This one's been loaded in, so we're going to go take a look at the original one. So I took this image. I think this was with the S5 Mark II, I think. So the way Magic LUT works is as long as you've got an image captured in any of our normal standard color profiles, you're fine. You can use it. You can't shoot in the black and white color profiles or the video-oriented profiles. So VLAW, hybrid log gamma, or the black and white profiles, or like 2100, so the HDR profiles. So this is in, I think this is in Vivid, right? No, this is in Standard. All I have to do to make this work is literally just tap Magic LUT, come in, look at the image that I've got. Let's say I want to take this image of my dog. We're going to look at that. It's going to use that image to generate the look here. It's going to get close-ish. Maybe this one wasn't really a great representation of it. So let's see if I can find a better representation. Let's go to... maybe this one. I really like this one. So we've got another representation here. And you see we get a little bit of a different, kind of contrast and look to what's on that particular display. If I want to see the differences between them, I can tap and hold, and that will show me the difference between the two. If I go in and I tap on the Magic LUT option again, I can then come in and change the opacity of that. And then I can go into adjust and say, hey, I really like this one, but I want to reduce a little bit of the contrast. So I want to lift the shadows up. Maybe I want to lift the shadow clipping point. I want to have that kind of faded clipping point there. I can do that. I can go into the hue saturation. Maybe I want to take my reds and I want to saturate them a little bit more. Maybe I want to take greens and desaturate them a little bit. I'm not really going to see much in there. But oranges. Let's raise the luminance of the oranges. Saturation a little bit. Make all my little shifts to it. Once I've done that, I can obviously just press and hold and I can see between the two. I can go back. I've got the edited version of it here. I can then tap the share icon and then I can create my LUT. This will tie it to the color profile that I was editing it on. Now, for the idea of, what would be best practices? How do I use, Magic LUT? What would be good recommendations? In general, think of Magic LUT as a way to get very close to a look you're trying to replicate or trying to emulate. And then you have more fine-tuned controls. So using tools like this are never going to get you 100% matched to what you're feeding it into. There are way too many variables to do that. There's differences in the way that cameras handle tonality through the base profiles, all that kind of stuff. So you will have some differences there, right? A look that was shot in log, when you try to convert that over to standard, the LUT's not gonna play right because the numeric color values are different between the profiles. So I recommend using Magic LUT as a way to get yourself close and then add your little tweaks by doing what I just did there. Being able to say, hey, I like this, maybe I want the general color tone of an image, but I want to shift and play around with maybe the source material has maybe a little more contrast, so I go in and I adjust my S-curves a little bit. Maybe it has a little more saturation because I have to tweak it for my standard profile. All right, so I have to add a little bit more saturation. Maybe I have to pull a little saturation out because standard on this camera is a little bit more punchy than what the source material was. That's what this tool lets you do. Once you save it out, you can then take it, put it onto your camera. It stores it in the apps once you do that, so then you can always reference back to that particular look and load it back onto other images. But again, LUTs are not going to be a silver bullet for editing. If your goal is to match every single image to be 100% identical, a LUT is not going to necessarily do that. A LUT is going to get you the overall look and the style of the tonality you want. But if I go and I shoot a really high contrast scene, so if I'm doing street photography, if I do a really high contrast scene and then a really low contrast scene, those LUTs are probably going to need to be different. A LUT designed for high contrast, when you apply it to a really low contrast, say it's like a cloudy, overcast day, they're going to look different. They're not going to be identical because you're not accounting for the fact that, well, one, your scene has less contrast in it. I would need to adjust for that. You can do that in the camera. That's why the my photo style setups are in there. I can take that LUT, that base LUT, load it into like my photo style 1 and say, hey, this is my contrasty version. This is my cloudy, dreary version. This is my sunny but partially cloudy kind of thing. If you're on a set or you're filming where you've got known lighting conditions, you can go in and say, hey, here's a version that I've designed for 5600 Kelvin. Here's one that I've designed for 3/4 lighting. This is one that I've designed for this particular lighting. And then you can save up to 10 of them in the My Photo Style with minor little tweaks so that you get them as close as you want, or if you know that you want them to be super different, you get them as super different. So yeah, hopefully that helps with Magic LUT. Let's see here. Does Flow have the auto transfer function? No, Flow is a very different tool. Flow is not designed for that use case. You would want to look at LUMIX Lab. That's what LUMIX Lab is designed for. I'm very pleased with the performance of Live View out of LUMIX Flow. With LUMIX Lab, I experienced low frame rate GH7 and iPhone 15 Pro Max. I have brought that up to the engineering team. Remember, this does go back to the purpose differences between the apps. You can very easily over bloat an app with too many features and functions that make it way more complicated to work with and decide when you need to use what and how do you determine what should be categorized under which platform. Splitting them into two apps where LUMIX Flow is workflow and monitoring, that's all it has to focus on. LUMIX Lab is auto transfer, basic editing, and then it has some live view functionality. It only has to focus on those things. It gives the apps themselves the ability to be more specific in what they do and be a little bit better at what they do. People often say that, in some cases, you have a jack of all trades, master of none. That's usually what single purpose apps are. They can do a whole lot, but they don't always do everything all that great. So yeah, that's just why that's part of why they're two different setups. Will multi-camera functionality be added to LUMIX Flow? No clue. I don't know if that's something in our plans with this. During monitoring, the phone display goes to sleep after some time. Please make it so the display stays on continuously, forced to remain on without going into the display settings. I have brought this up to the engineering team. I know Matt has brought that up to the engineering team as well. My devices don't do it, but I don't know if that's because I don't set my devices to do auto sleep. My Android phone does do auto sleep, but when I'm connected to the app, it doesn't auto sleep, so not sure. I haven't really done a lot of testing on iOS. Like I said, for some it's unfortunate. For me, it's great. I'm an Android user and Windows user primarily. I use Apple because I have to for work. So I'm not as tuned into are these problems on iOS devices for background monitoring. See, is it possible to streamline the connection process for LUMIX Lab to the camera? How much... I don't... This is going to sound really mean. How much more simple do you want it? It's literally you turn Bluetooth on the camera, you hit pair camera, and it's connected. That's it. If I want to connect Wi-Fi to then have it, run wireless monitoring, I tap that. The app tells the camera to turn Wi-Fi on. It links the two, and then you're good to go. I genuinely would like to know what you would want more streamlined. I do see a couple more comments in here, like you shouldn't need to confirm Wi-Fi on each time. Use 8 for a while and it connected without any interaction. There's different mentalities there. I know the Wi-Fi confirmation is actually something that's built in iOS and Android's base OS level, so it's possible that the other apps are not actually following best practice by the phone manufacturer. When I connect in my Android device, I have the option when I make a first-time connection. It says, this connection has no internet. Do you want to connect one time, always, or reject? If you tap always, you'll never get that question again to say, hey, do you confirm connecting to this Wi-Fi on my Android devices? My iOS devices, it does ask me, but I've had that happen even with just regular Wi-Fi connections, not just app connections. So we'll bring it up to the engineering team, but it's possible that ours is doing this because we are following a playbook that's been provided by Android and iOS on how apps should function when they are connecting without an internet connection. It's possible others might not be following the best practice. There are potential reasons why you don't want to have an auto, like where it just automatically connects in. That means if you're in a room full of people, or you're in like a trade show or an event, or you're in an area where, you know, there are other people that are, you know, monitoring or using the apps, you could run into a problem where your camera connects to their device. But yeah, we can always look further in that. I think it's Izzy says, why does recording stop if LUMIX Flow disconnects? I don't have that problem. I've done force Wi-Fi disconnect. I've done, I mean, if I unplug the cable, I've had potential problems with that. Actually, no, that was on the old version. That was on version 1. On the version we just released, and I've tested this with the S1IIs and everything, the only time I can force the app and the recording to stop is if I close LUMIX Flow. If I actually just go into the system and I close LUMIX Flow, or if the app crashes. I work with test versions of the app, so I'm more prone to getting a crash because they're test builds. And I've had them crash a couple of times. It stops recording, but after the release we did on the 20th, the only time I can make it crash is if I force it to like close the app. Yeah, the camera will just keep recording. So I'm curious what camera you're using, what version of the app you're using. Have you tested it recently? Stuff like that. So Yugaheim says, Sean, you mentioned that LUMIX can be slow in adding new features to their cameras. I just want to say that I find LUMIX very responsive to new feature requests relative to other brands. Yeah, some of this might just be more, I mean, I've worked here for 10 years. I've been through over 10 years, almost 11 years. I've been through times where, you know, we have updates out, you know, within weeks of when we push things. So in some cases, I have maybe a higher expectation in some cases. But I also know that these cameras are getting way more and more complicated. They're more intricate in what we can do. So, you know, adding things definitely need to have, you know, more testing done. Make sure that, you know, if we're adding something, that it gives you a lot more functionality. Let's see here. iPhone 15 Pro Max. Lab sometimes crashes when I tap check button in the bottom right from a tool on the editing page. Oddly, the back button in the bottom left will do the same action and not crash. I'm just going to say Hal, because I don't know how to pronounce the rest of your handle. If you're seeing problems like that, probably the number one thing I'd recommend is uninstall and reinstall the app, see if that fixes it. I have had, especially on this phone, I've had more problems that pop up after I do an iOS update or after I do a security update that comes out that changes something at a base level, that now all of a sudden the app, not even just our app, like I've had where like Lightroom doesn't even want to work, or Capture One doesn't even want to work unless I uninstall and reinstall it. So I'm not saying that it's not a problem on our side, but I've noticed a pattern that it tends to be closer to when app stuff updates, or OS systems update. So, more questions. A LUMIX tablet with custom OS on it that just works for the lab and Flow apps and remote monitoring would be nice. It would be nice. No one would buy it. Yeah, would be cool. Absolutely no one would buy it. It would be a money pit. Tablet and phone manufacturing are way too competitive for camera companies to kind of really be getting into it. I mean, look at the other camera company that does make phones. You rarely see them in the United States because it's dominated by Samsung and Apple. And then specialty tablet, stuff like that. You've got Samsung makes a billion different little, inexpensive tablets. You have all the really cheap, inexpensive tablets out there. And yeah, that's usually not a business I think that you're going to see a lot of companies pushing into outside of those that are already established. It's a cool idea, though. Makes sense. Thanks for having me with both ads, but I hope feedback is helpful. Yeah, everyone's feedback and commentary on these streams is incredibly helpful. Understanding how all of you use the apps, the cameras, the lenses, everything that we produce, that always helps anybody, any company, any product. User feedback is one of the best things that exists, I think, with the modern internet. Now, it's a double-edged sword because you get, I'm going to say for every 10, helpful pieces of feedback that, have the required information, you're probably getting like 8 that are either incomplete or just completely off the wall. But every piece, everything that is ever said, to the company. And I know this is going to probably open up a firestorm in the comments about this. Maybe not. Even negative commentary can be helpful as long as it's constructive. Someone that just posts something like, I hate this. Okay, why? Or I love seeing these on like the Facebook groups and stuff like that. Like, is it okay to download this firmware? I've heard there are problems with it. Okay, what problems have you heard? Give reference points to, so that other people, if you're asking the question, you want a general, like an actual genuine response, lay out what your concerns are, because the reality is, one, there's probably someone else that has the same concern that you do. And two, there's probably a ton of people that have either direct first-hand information that can either refute or confirm the concern that you have, and letting people just guess what you mean by it usually is why forums and things turn into like cesspools of, throwing, hate back and forth, where it's like, oh, you should, RTFM, read the manual, that kind of thing. Those aren't helpful comments. But if we learn how to articulate what you want to see from us, what you want to see improved, what the question is that you have for others out there, like almost everybody that's ever commented here and asked us a question, y'all give us super detailed, like, hey, I have this question, and if it's something that I don't fully understand the question, I don't think I've run into a situation where someone didn't come back and clarify and say, oh, well, it's this, and this is what I want to know or kind of understand. That helps us all get to a more constructive point to where it's, oh, okay, now I understand what your challenge is. I can answer that for you. Or I've never run into that before. Let's have a conversation about it and see if it's something we can troubleshoot. So feedback and commentary is incredibly valuable. It's valuable to others. I'm sure there are other people in the chat that have similar questions to those of you that are asking these questions, but maybe they don't want to chat. Maybe they just, they're lurkers. You want to watch, consume the content, which is great. But always know that you can ask questions. No one's going to judge for a question here. If they do judge someone on a question here and I catch it, they're getting booted off the channel, because I ain't got time for that. This is not a platform where you get to criticize other people because they ask a question. That's just not okay. In my book, that's not okay anywhere. So all of that to say thank you for the interaction, the questions, and the commentary that you all provide. It's great. Yeah. This is straight up one of the best parts of my job, is being able to chat with y'all and just not have to necessarily always be like, hey, I'm the corporate side of the industry. Like, no, I'm a photographer, videographer too. I want to share my knowledge with all of you, and hey, I learn a lot from all of you as well. Let's see here. Regarding false color, see camera rig APX 1 year ago. Free FC for Lumix. I don't know what that is. If you can clarify what that is, Fridge Magnets 3330. I like that username. Yeah, clarify in the comments. If it's a link to something, I don't think our chat will let you post a link, but you can describe it. Feature request. Please add photo shoot project in Flow for storyboard and cataloging a shoot similar to what is possible in the video project types, with ability to import inspiration photos. That's a good idea. I think I saw Fraser in the chat here. Hey Matt, if you're watching this, that would be a good reason. Matt Fraser and I have had a couple conversations back and forth about, like, you know, if LUMIX Flow is designed as a workflow video tool, for the longest time I didn't see a reason why there should be photo functions in it, because it's designed as a video production tool. You just brought up a good point to me, Sean, that yeah, photographers do storyboarding as well for product shoots, and there could be a cool concept there. So yeah, we can bring that to the engineers. Again, no idea if it's going to happen, but we can bring it to the engineering of the software team and see if that's something they would consider. Off subject, but have to say thanks for the 100mm macro full frame. It's a dream to work with. It is one of my favorite lenses as well. I've contemplated, so those that know me and have been here, I have our lenses tattooed on me. I've actually contemplated getting the 100mm macro tattooed because I tattoo optics that I love that are my primary. So micro four thirds, this is the 42.5 and the 12mm Summilux. And then I have the 15 Summilux here. On full frame, that 100mm macro is quite possibly my favorite prime lens that we make. I use it for street photography. I use it for some macro work, though I'm a terrible macro photographer. I've even used it for some astro photography. It is just one of my favorite lenses ever. So yeah, it's a killer lens. And if you ever meet us in person, or if maybe on a different stream, I'll give you the story about it. I was incredibly against the idea of us making a 100mm macro because I didn't see a point. Yeah. So, question on Android in Lumix Lab. It would be nice if confirm messages disappear instead of having to tap clear. Also, the Android swipe back gesture doesn't work. Those are very, very good points. I have asked that about the swipe back feature, knowing that a lot of people, myself included, I don't use the on-screen navigation buttons on my phones. I use the swipe function. And yeah, for the first, like, I don't know, maybe month of using Lab before we released it, I kept instinctively going to swipe back and realizing I had to hit the arrow. So I'll push that again. Comments like that are great to put in the comment section after the video, like under the video, so that they're a long-standing record that we can then reference to. Because if I'm the only one saying it to the engineering team without backup of actual users, it's harder to justify that it's something we should use or update. Are there any plans to make LUMIX Flow Flow a desktop app? Entering all the text with thumbs is maddening. I've asked about it. What I will tell you, if you are running an M series Mac, like I have an M3 MacBook Pro here, you can run LUMIX Flow on there. You can plug your camera in, and you can use it as a monitor. You may be able to use it because it's hardwired. You may be able to already use it because it's an app. Your MacBook will recognize as an iPad, because I think that's what what the apps that are designed for mobile show up as for a MacBook. But yes, it does work on my M3 MacBook. I have tested it, though we don't have, like, it's not a formal thing. Technically, because the App Store references as a tablet, and we added Android tablet support, or iOS tablet support, or iPad support. You can just go to the App Store on a MacBook. I think it does work on Windows too, because Windows has a tie-in with the Android App Store, but I'd have to take a look at that. Oh, couldn't find a way to turn it horizontal. That is something that I have brought up to the engineering team, that because because a MacBook doesn't have the gyro sensor for the screen change, I think whatever the default operating mode is why it always holds to vertical. But I've asked the engineers. I know Matt has asked the engineers about it as well. Let's see here. Can I request that Lumix create a 50mm macro to mate with the fantastic 100mm macro? Of course you can request. I don't think we're going to do a 50 macro. I think general consensus is people want longer macros. I know since we launched the 100, I got a bunch of people that had messaged and they were like, well, no, I want a 180mm macro, because it was an old 180mm macro years ago. But yeah. Will Lumix Lab also work on an M3? So I mean, I'm using an M3. This is the M3 MacBook. M series Macs are running ARM processors that have access to the mobile apps. So while it's not an official thing that we say we support, the way I've observed it working, it may work if you only need LUMIX Flow for the scripting and the storyboarding to then kick out a PDF. That may be a really good solution for you. Obviously, as we mentioned, it doesn't have the ability to rotate, so if you plug in and you're using the video side of it, the video is going to be vertical, because that's what the app's native, I guess, native orientation is, unless it gets the gyro sensor to tell it which direction to go. And by that I mean it holds in a vertical position with the text going organized right, as if I'm holding my MacBook in a vertical position like a tablet would be. So my Lumix Lab on Android doesn't automatically link or add to the app library the photos I downloaded from the camera. Double check that when you go to add devices, or if you are automatically loading images. See how I can get to that. I want to see how I can demonstrate this. So I think if I go to transfer, I'll leave it on this for right now while I'm answering some of the questions while we're working with this. Oh yeah. Just for clarity, the Flow and Lumix Lab stuff, it would need a wired connection, but Lumix Lab doesn't support wired connections. Yes. Well, no. So what I was gonna say is, so I've got the images here, and when I go into the settings to be storage of RAW and JPEG, storage of RAW and HEIF, add raw files to gallery. Who asked that question? So I would have probably my Lumix Lab app on Android doesn't automatically link or add to the app library the photos I downloaded from the camera. Double check that in this setting. So when you're looking at the images that you're transferring, go into the settings icon and double check that you're sending RAW and JPEG or JPEG. The Lumix Lab app does not support RAW files. And so if I select RAW, but then I don't select add raw files to gallery, it won't, like, it'll transfer them to your phone, but it won't put them in the gallery. If I'm in RAW plus JPEG and I don't have add raw files to gallery, the JPEG will be added, the RAW file won't be. So I would say just double check that you're not just sending raw files, since Lumix Lab can't work with just raw files. Are there any plans to create a raw file from the built-in focus stacking? The high resolution mode can create a raw file. I'm not sure. I don't know what would be required for all of that stuff. Camera Rig is a YouTube site by a dev who made free LUTs for Lumix cameras, white balance, and others too. Oh, I will double check and check out the channel. Will Lumix consider removing the initial location access permission requirement in order to use LUMIX Flow app? For example, if we are using mobile that does not have a cell service on a film set. I can ask them. I don't know if location is... I don't know if location is something that's required for it. Yeah. Well... whoa, we're at 2:30 already. And then last question you had, I don't have answers or comments for any kind of future development. Well, with that, thanks y'all for staying tuned in. This was, I think, a pretty fun stream. Hopefully those of you that have not ever looked at LUMIX Flow, learned a little bit about, some of its other functionality. Thank you all for the awesome questions and the conversations. These are amazing. This is what I love about this industry. It's just hands down the best part of what I do. And that's because of the interactions that you all have with the company. So we will be back next Thursday, 2 p.m. Eastern, here on YouTube. Be sure to tune in. Still figuring out what I want to talk about next week, but I'm sure we'll have something to discuss. If you have questions that you didn't get a chance to ask, or maybe you didn't want to ask them on the live stream, drop them in the comments after this video. It helps us be able to track through them, and I can always reference them for future live streams. If you don't already, take a look. Maybe join us over on Discord. There is a ton of conversations. There's amazing creators over there. All of the Lumix creators that we've worked with are on that platform as well, so you have access to be able to ask them questions. I'm on there if you want to be able to ask us questions over there as well. It's a really fun platform. I highly recommend you to go take a look at it if you haven't already. We will have, what else? Check out our Instagram and our TikTok if you want to be able to doom scroll and, watch some relatively funny content. We've got some stuff over there. Subscribe to the channel if you don't already. I know looking at our analytics, I think the vast majority of you do subscribe, but we do have a bunch that don't subscribe. Maybe these streams have earned a subscribe from you. Like the video, that helps with the algorithm. Commenting helps the algorithm. Share the video to people that you think may be interested in this. Otherwise, have a great rest of y'all's day. Have a great weekend. Get out there, create some cool stuff. If you do anything online, share it with us, tag us. It's at Lumix USA. We love to see what y'all do with our cameras. So with that, see y'all next week. Later.